Gospel reading for today is from the Gospel according to Matthew chapter 9, beginning with verse 9. As Jesus walked on, he saw Matthew, a tax collector, at his post. Jesus approached and said, "Follow me." And Matthew got up and followed. Now it happened that while Jesus was at table in Matthew's house, many tax collectors and notorious sinners came to join Jesus and the disciples at dinner. The Pharisees saw this and complained to the disciples, saying, "What reason can the teacher have for eating with tax collectors and sinners?" Overhearing the remark, Jesus said, "People who are in good health don't need a doctor. Sick people do. Go and learn the meaning of the words, 'I desire compassion, not sacrifices.' I have come to call not the righteous, but sinners." As Jesus was speaking, a synagogue official came up, knelt down, and said, "My daughter has just died, but if you come and lay hands on her, she will live." Jesus got up and went with the official, and so did the disciples. As they were going along, a woman who had suffered from hemorrhages for 12 years came up behind him and touched the hem of his cloak. She was saying to herself, "If only I can touch his cloak, I will be healed." Jesus turned around and saw her. "Courage, daughter," he said. "Your faith has healed you." That very moment, the woman was healed. When Jesus arrived at the house of the synagogue official, a noisy crowd had gathered, and the flute players who served as mourners had already arrived. When he saw them, he said, "Get out. The child is not dead, only asleep." They all laughed at him. After the crowd had been put out, he entered and took the girl by the hand, and she got up, and the news spread throughout the countryside. La palabra de Dios.
Well, friends, it's been a very busy week. Many of you, for all of us, we've kind of been sprinting toward the finish line here, toward the installation, trying to get all the things done. We've been sorting seeds and texting people about food and moving tables and transcribing music and setting out plates and setting up a Venmo account and emails, so many emails, and rearranging the chairs and making and editing and folding and stuffing all the bulletins and taking bags to Goodwill. I'm gonna keep going. And counting up all the RSVPs and sending reminder emails and, oh my gosh, probably so many other things that I don't even know about and maybe never will. It's kind of a big day. And like I said to the kiddos during Wondering Time, in my tradition of the United Church of Christ, we think of an installation as a covenant between the pastor and the congregation. And that feels very salt and lighty to me. It's a commitment to each other, one that is desired and chosen by both, a promise to love one another, to care for one another, to hold each other accountable, to support each other. And for it to work, it really has to go both ways. So I've been thinking a lot this week about you and what it means for me to be making a covenant with this community. It was actually just about a year ago, I looked at my calendar from this week last year, that I first met with Juan Carlos about this congregation. And I had decided, yes, I would put together my ministerial profile, is what they call like a pastor's portfolio. And I was rewriting my essays and doing all the things. And as I was doing that, I was thinking about you. And I was wondering about you, about who you were and what you were all about, what your values were, how you practiced them together. And I've been thinking about this week. And I've been returning to this poem, to our modern sacred text this morning, which is also going to be the opening poem for the installation this afternoon. Our mission is to plant ourselves at the gates of hope. And this poem reminds me of Leaven, full stop. Leaven and Salt and Light, more than any other community I've been a part of, sounds like this to me. A place of truth-telling about your own soul, first of all, and its condition. Many congregations look to their pastor to hold all of their deepest secrets, even the things that they might be ashamed about. But this place, Salt and Light Congregation, there is story after story after story of this place, of people telling these things, yes, perhaps to their pastor, but more importantly, to each other. Maybe even publicly. And that's kind of the point, to be seen, known, and loved for all of who we are. And to trust that the stories that we share change us. Change who we are as a community, change how we show up in the world. This doesn't mean everyone's all up in each other's business, hopefully. It does mean that we all know, and it doesn't mean that we all know everything about each other, but it does mean that we do know more about each other than what's on the surface. That we are willing to share our vulnerabilities with each other. And that when we show up here, we're actually trying not to perform for each other. It means that on the whole, we understand that it is in the unveiling of these hidden parts of ourselves that we find acceptance and love and liberation. In other words, that it is a place where we find God. Which leads me, of course, to today's text in Matthew. This is kind of a doozy of a text. I don't know if you all felt this way. There's a lot going on. There's Jesus eating with the tax collectors, and then there's the woman with the hemorrhages, and then there's also a little girl who's brought back to life. It's like shows how wild it is that the resurrection of a little girl kind of feels almost like an afterthought. Hardly even reflected on in the text. Just another miracle of Jesus, moving on. So where do we start with this text, with all of this? And what exactly do these three things have to do with each other? I think it has to do, a lot is revealed when we pay attention to power in this text. So starting with the tax collectors, they have a lot of power. And they're also called sinners because they're Israelites who perhaps are in bed with the Roman Empire, enforcing the empire's laws to extract essential resources from their own people. Or perhaps they are forced to enforce the empire's laws, which is a grief all its own. But even as they have this power, they're somewhat outcast from their home culture. And we hear that in the Pharisees' question, why does your teacher eat with sinners? So they're powerful, but their status is limited. And we'll come back to them. Then there's the woman with the hemorrhages. And she, of course, has no power. She's at the very margins of society, and she would have been seen as unclean at the time, unable to participate in most of basic life, including things just as basic as marriage, companionship. In other texts, when she touches the hem of Jesus' garment, he feels her. He feels that energy before he sees her, and he asks, who's taken some of my power? So although she's at the margins, She knows what she needs, and she finds a way to get what she needs. And then finally, the little girl. Listeners to this story at the time, when it was circulating in the ancient Near East, would have understood that she is the daughter of a high-powered leader in the synagogue. And so she would have grown up at the center of society with access to privilege, resources, and power. So for her father, the synagogue leader, a synagogue leader who would have traditionally been more aligned with the perspective, say, of the Pharisees, to turn to Jesus would have been unexpected. But Jesus responds by healing her as well. So inside of all of these power dynamics and all these layers, let's pay attention then to what is happening. I think that this is all about people reaching toward each other, and it's about restoration of relationship. So thanks for following along with me in this, we're excavating this text. Sometimes it's not a story. Anyway, okay. So we're going to start with the simplest one. How does the woman with the hemorrhages, what relational movement is there here? It's really clear in this story that she reaches toward Jesus. And coming from the margins of society, she finds Jesus without even his needing to consciously respond. In touching him, she's healed. And in being healed, she's brought back into relationship with the rest of society. So being in relationship with Jesus brings her back into relationship with everyone. That healing that she claims for herself through touching his garment. Then the father of the little girl, he also reaches toward Jesus. And though he's in a position of power that Jesus generally preaches against, Jesus also responds to him by also reaching back to him and offering healing. And in doing so, that brings the father as well and his daughter into a new and different relationship with their surroundings, with relationally in context of society. Perhaps one of more humility, perhaps one of less self-righteousness, bringing more back to life than just his daughter, back to life within him. And as for the tax collectors, I think what's interesting in this text is that Jesus reaches toward them. He calls on Matthew, the tax collector, to follow him. Although they have power, he also understands that there's a kind of healing needed for them as well, a healing from a broken societal relationship. So when Matthew responds to Jesus' call, Jesus sits at table with him and with his friends. And this becomes a symbol of bringing them back into right relationship with their local community. So each of these examples brings people back into relationship in community. The point of all this, and we can see it only when we're paying attention to the power dynamics, is that this healing, this bringing back into relationship, is available to all who want it. It's not just about Jesus' relationship to these people. His actions always point back to their relationship with each other. The healing is about their love for one another becoming more complete. I believe that this kind of healing love is also available through any relationship where we show up as real, as whole and true. When we reach for one another, when we listen to one another, from there we can find acceptance for who we are, all of us, and not only that, but joy and love. And we stand there beckoning and calling, telling people what we are seeing, asking people what they see. It's not that it's not messy or contradictory or complex or even that it makes intellectual sense at all. But it's that the love is still there in the midst of the messiness, in the trying to see and in the seeing. and in the telling. All of us who are really willing to listen deeply to one another and to share of our own true selves can experience healing. So this is what we do here at Salt and Light. We tell our stories and we listen to each other's stories. We build relationships. We love each other. And we have the audacity to believe that our stories matter, that our relationships matter, that they can lead us even into a relationship with something that is beyond us. That this kind of reaching for and seeing each other is relationship with a higher power that some of us call God. And that these relationships, these stories lead us toward working to change the conditions that surround us that are causing harm. We have the audacity to believe that the power of these stories can even transform the world. I really think that our stories have that power, that our relationships have that power, if we have the courage to share them. And the thing is that you already believe this, that you all have taught me this. This is a part of the fabric of love and community and Salt and Light, and it has been here for a very long time. So today, this small group of folks gathered here this morning, the folks, most of you are going to help make this installation happen. I want to say thank you. I want to say thank you for inviting me to be a part of this community. Thank you for allowing me to make this covenant with you. Thank you for telling me your stories and for listening to mine. Here in this place of truth-telling about our souls and their condition, I am filled with gratitude for the opportunity to be in this place. Amen. So, one of the values that we hold in this place is that we do honor the wisdom of our gathered community and share our stories with one another. And so we set aside time in our service for one-to-one conversations. These are optional. And so we want to emphasize that if it's not for you in general or not for you today, you have the opportunity to have a glass of water in the sunroom, coffee, this beautiful garden, to take a walk. But we will take about 5 to 10 minutes now and turn to a neighbor and have a conversation. And I will give you a prompt now. And that prompt is maybe share a story about a time that you felt seen and heard. Or a time that you didn't. And what happened. We'll go till 5 to the hour. So 10:55, I'll call y'all back. Thanks.